Smart cities is a term that has garnered cachet in an increasingly urbanized world. It generally relates to technology and how it is connecting buildings, businesses, and the environment in ways that reduce energy consumption, improve safety, attract investment, and enhance sustainability and livability. These living labs, however, have been slower to materialize in the United States. So here today to talk about the future of smart cities is Edward Stoch, a licensed architect and professor at Thomas Jefferson University's College of Architecture and the Built Environment in Philadelphia. Edgar, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Oh. Edgar, you wrote recently that the philosophy behind smart cities is actually less about technology and more about humanism. Can you elaborate on that for us, please?
Yeah, absolutely. So smart cities really have to put the person, the human, back in the center. So smart cities have to be people-centric. And so smart cities are not about technologies, the latest internet advancements or self-driving cars. It's really an environment where the person, the individual, has to be back in the center of all the technology. So, you know, we're moving from a 19th century environment where everything is about cars and mobility and revenue, to a city which needs to really foster a healthy lifestyle. And that's really the center of what really smart cities are.
We've heard a lot about smart cities and development in the Middle East and in Asia, but not so much in North America. And my question is, why is that? And what needs to change domestically for smart cities to break through?
First of all, I would say that also in North America, there are cities which are really at the forefront in developing smart cities. I would like to single out especially Toronto. But coming back to your initial question, I think, you know, it is just easier if you basically build cities from scratch, like in Southeast Asia and China, perhaps in Singapore, where you can start with a state-of-the-art technology, urban planning, population health measures, clean technology, green products, and so forth. It's just sort of you're starting from the get-go with smart technologies, the interconnectivity of buildings and so forth. It is much harder to bring up older cities up to speed, like here in Philadelphia, which is a city with a lot of history and tradition, but at the same time also a very sort of you know, aging infrastructure. So that's a big hurdle, and but I think American cities making big strides forward to overcome that problem. Certainly there is money involved, and so private-public partnerships are necessary to move these technologies forward and to get our cities up to speed in terms of smart city development.
You mentioned Philadelphia as one that's making some advances. You know, what does, you know, when you're trying to update an older building that might even need fundamental renovation and reconstruction, you know, how do you make them smarter and better connected? What is kind of the, if a city is looking to take the first steps, or even in a place like Toronto, which has taken steps but is still in evolving, what's the process here?
So I think we really have to start with the larger scale, the urban scale. So when I define smart cities, I really go from an urban scale, the entire city, to the building scale, to a device scale, or the individual scale. So when we start thinking about ramping up or bringing cities up to speed, we really have to start on with the urban infrastructure. We have to look into how to turn parking spots into parks, streets into bike paths. We have to make sure that the environment is healthy for the inhabitants. We have to increase population health in an urban scale. So that's really number one, and that goes along with environmental aspects like clean air and so forth, noise reduction, ventilation, access to sun, and so forth. Once we have done that job, we can move on to buildings. It's with the building scale. New buildings clearly need to be environmentally friendly. They have to have a hopefully neutral carbon footprint. They're producing as much energy as they are using, and they are using materials which are hopefully based on natural resources like wood and so forth. You mentioned older buildings, how to ramp up older buildings. I think if the building stock still has value, I think there are ways to, for example, work on the building envelope, to deploy photovoltaic technologies for generating energy within the building envelope, to use cleaner materials for finishings inside, to use controls to control the environment in a better way, that the user, the end user, really has control over his own environment.
Mm-hmm.
And then finally, perhaps on the individual scale, you know, we all have Fitbits and health trackers and these kind of things, but there is so much more we can do on an individual scale to get connected to buildings or the city. You know, we can track the environmental aspects on our cell phones to make sure we are not exposing ourselves to unhealthy environments if we have, for example, respiratory problems.
Mm-hmm.
So in a nutshell, I think to revamp a city as a whole, we have to work really with the macro scale, go to the intermediate scale, and then the micro scale.
That's very interesting. So start from the broader perspective and work your way in.
Correct. Yes,
Mm-hmm.
absolutely. But it's all interconnected. So that's really the key.
Yeah. Your university's Institute of Smart and Healthy Cities focuses on 7 critical domains that include architecture and the built environment. How must architecture itself change in the context of these other domains, which include population health, data acquisition, transportation, and so forth, to be more effective and relevant for the future?
That's an awesome question. So if you look at the percentage, how important different aspects are in focusing on our health and personal health, it turns out that only 20% is actually determined by our physicians, doctors in the health system. 80% are aspects which are outside that domain. And the built environment takes care about 50%. So we as architects working in the built environment, you know, again, we're working on city scales all the way down to building scales and then component scales and materials. So we as architects have to make sure that also we put the human back into the center of our focal point, of our focus. Mm-hmm. So, and I'll give you an example. So if we do city planning, we have to make sure that a city plan is not just a functional city plan where we're taking care about infrastructure, traffic flow, and these kind of things. We have to make sure that there is enough space for a healthy environment and as a platform for a healthy lifestyle. Same thing looking in buildings. It's not just about structures and enclosures and maybe some beauty. It's also, we have to make sure that on every single aspect, we're contributing to a healthy environment. So I think as an architect, we actually contributing largely to population health questions. It's sometimes overseen because we think only hospitals and doctors and physicians in the healthcare industry takes care of health. It's actually much, much more complex than that.
I read a statistic recently that projected the global market for smart cities to reach $1.8 trillion by 2025, mostly in response to the notion that the Earth will have more than 7 billion people on it by then. In your estimation, how is that likely to manifest itself? I mean, how is this likely to affect people's lives?
Well, most people, 80% of the people are already living in dense urban situations, and that will increase. So we will increase our cities. And obviously, we can't just do what we have done in the past, expanding our suburbia all the way to, you know, in an infinite way. We have to actually densify our cities. We have to go denser, we have to go taller. at the same time, we have to be greener and smarter. So I think a lot of technology and a lot of money will be spent to make our cities smarter, whether it has to do with infrastructure like public transportation, public transportation which is tailored to the individual. So it's sort of a customized public transportation system based on self-driving cars and electric vehicles. But also it will be based on new building technologies like 3D printing and so forth. I think a revolution will take place in data acquisition and making sure cities know exactly how the environmental aspects look like in the city to make quick adjustments and recommendations for the users. I think we have to work on home automation systems to control in our buildings much better our own environment. We have to make sure energy is addressed in a smart way by producing green energy within the city. But I also want to talk about social equity and in these aspects where the smart cities need to provide a platform for everybody. We can't just provide a good platform for just a certain socio-economic group. Smart cities have to balance this. Smart cities develop in every aspect and in every neighborhood in the same way. Otherwise, you're really cutting out large parts of the population.
Mm-hmm. You know, as you were talking, I was thinking about how when you mentioned social equity, the other big factor that's affecting everybody right now is the economy. And given the expense that it would take to make cities smarter, how much do you think what the pandemic's impact is going to have in terms of either slowing this movement down, or do you think that it might compartmentalize it a little bit more?
My prediction is that the COVID-19 crisis actually speeds up our process in developing smart cities. You know, think about it. So within almost no time, we moved from traditional work environment to work at home, which changed completely our, the mix of buildings within cities.
Right.
So large corporations, and actually we all see that actually working from home works pretty well in most cases, and the real estate stock in cities have to sort of address that. So I'm pretty sure large corporations already rethinking how much real estate they actually really need. At the same time, our cities became cleaner and less polluted because there was less traffic.
Right.
So we all saw these pop-up gardens, pop-up bike ways, and repurposed curb spaces in our cities. And people like it. People do not want to go back necessarily to the situation there was before with congested streets and these aspects. Mm-hmm. I think we will also see differences in how we develop our apartments. If work from home becomes sort of a new theme, and I don't want to say we always work all the time from home, but I think there will be now a healthy mix in the future, working from home and working in the office. But that we have to address this with our designs for apartments. I think an office in our apartment will be now probably sort of the norm. So developers have to address this, and the building industry. And at the same time, we also have to look into aspects like fast internet access, G5 technology, and to making this remote working actually possible. Probably the largest impact I can see in our cities is the e-commerce area. So, if you're really just looking at the numbers, Amazon moved from about a 15% market share in sales to 25% within 3 months. So 25% of our daily buying goods is now accommodated by Amazon. And certainly that hurts businesses and shops and the local market in cities. So we have to address this in a rapid pace. So otherwise, we will, that's the downside, we will see cities with a lot of empty first floors or streetscape. So where, basically businesses going out of business because we, the consumers, moved online. I think how to address this, probably only through policies. I don't think that the architectural arena is the right place to address this. But so that, I think in a nutshell, I believe the crisis propelled us 10 years forward within just a few months in addressing a lot of these aspects.
Edgar, thank you very much for your thoughts on this. So we'll definitely be keeping an eye on how this trend evolves. Thank you for watching. This is John Caulfield from Building Design and Construction.
Thank you very much.